you were here at Airbnb at my place and saw the whiteboard before you saw me.
That's true.
Because I had the key, the locker outside, and I was probably working it out. And I remember that you and I didn't even meet, and we were sleeping like adjacent rooms. And then it's like, we've got to meet in person, and we had an amazing chat. And wow, isn't that great when you just say yes to kind of letting weirdos like you in your house, and then your life changes.
I know. And it's funny because I was nomadic for a while, and I stayed you were the first Airbnb I stayed in as a nomad. I'm just a little bit worried that this is not presenting on Facebook, so maybe we can just check that in a second.
Okay.
But so yours was the first Airbnb I stayed in, and we like created this amazing friendship. And ever since then, I'm like, wow, I'm going to meet so many friends through Airbnb. And it's never happened again. And I was like nomadic for about 2 years.
Which is a shame. I've got you all to myself, which is quite good. Possessive coach.
I'm just going to quickly
check. You want to check Facebook? I can't check that, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. I'm just worried I put it on the wrong place. So let me just have a look.
All I can see is us on Zoom. So it's quite weird to you telling me we're live, but I can't quite see, normally the interactions and the comments. Is that what you see at your end?
Yeah, so I'm just seeing us. That's why I've got to go into Facebook to check. I'm just wondering, I suppose it doesn't matter. I started recording also.
Okay. If it's not gone onto Facebook, I don't know if you want to start again or whatever, I'm happy. Either way.
No, we're good. We're on.
We're good.
We're on. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so we're good. So, okay, so you got the Gr8fool.
Yes, Gr8fool. At the time, obviously, no, Gr8fool still, I think it already existed because Gr8fool was born before the coaching practice. It was born, just quickly, without boring everyone, but it was born as a name for my motorbike ride from London to Venice. Yeah, if you actually go on my page, Gr8fool.com, which is spelled Gr8fool.com, there's a blog or two on there about that adventure, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But yeah, I just was looking for a name for an Instagram page to kind of blog or just share that experience from London to Venice. It took me about 5-6 days, and I raised some awareness around some stuff that was going on in Nepal, and also funds to support flooding and a new school in Nepal. So Gr8fool was born out of that because it was such a great adventure, and I was grateful that I could do it, that I got to do that because I had a motorbike and everything. But it was also foolish. So that's how the first name came about. And then that year I qualified as a life coach, and then I decided to keep that name for the coaching practice when I eventually decided to coach professionally, because I did the course more selfishly than for other people. I just wanted to kind of learn the tools for myself because I was going through my own transition, and the tools were great, and I still use them today, and now I share them with others. So Gr8fool hasn't got like a specific niche, as you would call them, in the coaching industry. I just coach. I love using coaching techniques and skills of questioning, staying curious, caring for others, and listening, which is something I definitely had to learn to do. And I use that at various ages. I use that at school, so at secondary schools, and senior executive, successful people in corporate environments, and also successful people in their own personal lives who just want to kind of find out if they can live even better lives. So I really work with various ages, various people, different backgrounds, because ultimately the common denominator is just to find out what a person wants to do better or reach more of, and then we work on that together.
I love it. And what I love about the story, I mean, we're not going to do too much about your business behind the scenes, but I just have to touch on this one thing, because I normally speak to business owners around what their minimum viable product was, like how they got started. And what I hadn't really thought about with your business is that your starting point was actually your bike ride before your actual business. So you chose the name not for your business, but for that adventure and experience and for your own coaching journey, I suppose. And I know also then that led not only to the coaching business, but also to your van life. So having had that like motorbike experience then created all these other opportunities because you had something real and tangible and like documented. You actually had the Instagram account, you had the vlogs, you had the blogs, like you had something you could then leverage and turn into a whole other opportunity. So I think it's just, that's a really great business insight, whether you are building any kind of business, is it can come from a passion, it can come from an experience, but creating something, documenting it, and actually just getting started is, that's the biggest leap to take.
That's a good way thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, I mean, I know that's how it happened, but it's interesting to look at it from a business perspective when you think, right, you've got a product, how can you then put it out there? And for me, it was more like, oh, I'm putting myself out there. Ooh, that's the product. Like, so just sharing what worked for me with others, because yeah, the bike ride was a result of a coaching journey for sure. I was coached to prepare for that because anyway, you'll see, or if you know me already, you know that I certainly was not physically or mentally prepared to ride on my own 1,500 kilometers across Europe on that Harley, but I did it. So yeah, you're right. So sometimes it's just like, yeah, use everything that you've got and that you're passionate about, what worked, what didn't work, and kind of see if you can keep doing that in your own business, and that it makes the business more fun as well because it's part of who you are.
Totally, yeah. It doesn't have to be like logical. It doesn't have to be pre-planned. It can be something that's inspired and adventure. And I think that's so beautiful about your work. It's so focused on adventure and freedom and joy and gratitude. Like, it's such a beautiful foundation. And often those are the things that we can forget. We can focus on the mechanics of money and productivity and like things that can feel more, I don't know what, are they more traditional? Whereas your focus is on the things that really make us feel alive.
Yeah. And when you're a coach or in this kind of service type of business, you are the product. They choose you. Obviously, you have different techniques, specializations, expertise, backgrounds that make who you are. But also, what you do, I think, says a lot to your clients and helps you connect with them. Because often, when people choose me as a coach, is because of some of these things that I have done and the way I approach life, not just the way I perhaps approach my questions or I approach my sessions. So the energy that you kind of put out there in your own day-to-day life, I think reflects on how you show up. But basically, it's about showing up as you in everything that you do, which is something I definitely encourage with people I work with. Is to find who you are. That's why I call myself a freedom coach. Who are you when you're completely free to be you and you got rid of all these blocks? Who are you? And then ideally, you should be that person in all areas. You shouldn't have, the old way of saying, I'm putting on my business hat, my parents' hat, my sister's hat, my friend's girlfriend's hat. You just change attitude. But actually, once you found your true self, it's like a big sigh of relief of just be that person. So for me, when I left corporate and got all excited about all these adventures, I got to know the real me more and more. I got to unleash it more and more. And that's how I show up with my friendships, with my relationships, and with my clients. And I think that's very important for clients to feel really good and kind of relaxed and comfortable to open up and dream big and as well, etc., etc. But yeah, but this today is not about that. We're going to talk about how the year unfolded as well.
I mean, I guess that's kind of similar because it is how we live it. So we're going to talk about 2020, how we live our coaching beliefs, how we put our coaching into practice in our own lives, and a bit about our businesses and how we've had to adapt and change. So let's go back to the beginning of 2020. And so we pretty much started the year together almost. I think I was in Los Angeles. I was about 3 months into my sabbatical, and I was in Los Angeles with my sister, and I was just about to like spread my wings as a nomad. So I'd spent a lot of time with friends and family, and then I was meeting up with Francesca and we were going to go travel, and that was going to be the start of more of a digital nomad lifestyle. So I thought. So when did you arrive in LA? I think it was like mid-January.
Literally, like, yeah, because I drove to Italy for Christmas, come back on the 6th, flew on the 7th. Maybe I arrived on the 8th, so quite early on in January, because we wanted to spend like almost a month together in Mexico. But I saw your lifestyle in LA with your cool sister, and I thought, I'm coming to get you. And then I'll stay a few days in LA. And we had an awesome time in LA, obviously, before we ventured to Mexico.
Yeah.
Together.
So maybe can you remember at the start of the year, if you were to take a guess, and I don't know if you did any of the, we do a lot of vision setting. Francesca and I have made a lot of vision boards, and we do a lot of journaling and reflections. Yeah. So this is part of our life. So I'm pretty sure in January, we both would have been like setting goals for the year or imagining what December would look like. Like, do you remember what goals or what vision you had for 2020 back in January?
Yeah, because you see, it's always hard because, as I said earlier, the last few years have been a bit more dreamy. So I like to have visions, but I also stay open to see what comes up. And luckily luckily I am like that. So 2020 was a bit easier to kind of welcome in as it showed up. But I think for me, it was about staying put in London a bit more. So I had been traveling a lot already, as you know. And I had a couple of trips planned just after LA and Mexico. I was planning to go to, and I did go to India and Nepal. So I was going to be away again for 3-4 weeks for mostly volunteering projects, and then came back a bit earlier because of the lockdowns. But the vision therefore was still to travel, because I love traveling now, but to spend more time in London and kind of create more established contract relationships with my coaching, between my coaching business and institutions, let's call them, in London. So I'd worked in schools already, so I wanted to connect with the schools again this year and more corporate offices. So there was a plan for me to do some talks, various talks throughout the year, at various offices, and that was going to introduce me to some multinationals, and then trying to collaborate with corporate, because those are the two main areas that I like to work with, schools and corporate, because I don't know, it's got perhaps a larger impact when you work with groups, but I want to work with younger people and kind of help. I wanted to help change the corporate environment, make it a little bit of a freer environment, and actually 2020 has done that. More than I was ever expecting to make an impact in my lifetime. So that's interesting. So stay more put in London and even create space for more personal relationships. So I was hoping to come back to London, still travel, but have more business based here. And why not even create space in my personal life to let some new love in? I think that was my vision.
I love it. And it's funny when you hear you talk, because I'm like, I feel like that's exactly what happened. Not how you expected.
So there you go. I predicted my own future, but I didn't want to do that at the expense of anyone else. Unfortunately, obviously 2020 has had quite a lot of cost and impact on people. But in some ways, on the positive side, there's been a lot of changes in people's lives. Whether they went for coaching or not is being imposed on people, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think because we were going to talk about how this year, how it was different from our expectations, and how we had to adapt and change along with everyone else. And we definitely had a lot of conversations this year where it's been like, it's hard, it's been, really difficult to not have that freedom to be able to travel or leave the house or connect with people. And I know a lot of the like coaching work that you had with the big companies where you were going to go and speak to them in person, those got cancelled. But then I think about the opportunities that have come your way, and it's not, I mean, it's different, but it's not far off what you were hoping.
It's crazy, right? And that brings it, because we wanted to touch on that point, didn't we? Of like, you can create a vision, but don't get too attached to that specific vision, or maybe if you do have a clear vision where you want to get to, don't get too attached to the how you get there. So you're right. I then somehow got an opportunity to apply to become an associate and now a fellow coach of a US coaching services company called Better Up, which wasn't in my plan in January. And that's opened up the doors to work with within the corporate environment to work with directors, executives, employees, basically, of multinationals to sign up to these amazing programs. So yeah, ultimately, I still managed to go through that door, through into that industry sector, through a different door. So yeah, that's interesting.
And you've still been able to go to schools, which is also
I'm
really
still
great.
been able to go to school, so I'm still, even though they closed during the first lockdown, I kept in touch with my connections at the school I was already working at before here in London, and I just asked, can I just volunteer some material and some videos for the students at home. And then luckily in the UK, despite the lockdown, they're managing to keep the schools open, at least up to secondary school that I know of. So I'm going into schools every week. So yeah, woohoo!
And like what I hear from that also is that you offered to volunteer. So I think it's like, it's also looking out for opportunities, and that's how you can adapt. Where can you provide value and service? And you never know what doors those will open. So maybe like, are there any tools or tips or something that you've used to help you adapt and be flexible? Or how do you think you've made this work? Like, how do you stay open? How do you find opportunities?
I'm a yes person, even though I had to, in a different talk, we can talk about how to learn to say no, because I say too many yeses. But in terms of business, one of the big lessons I've learned during my self-development is to really welcome rejections and people saying no to offers or anything like that, or just say yes to things that you might not feel prepared for. So the way I've adapted this year, like most of us probably had to do, is to just throw out ideas, regardless of whether they'll be accepted or not. Stay connected. I connect a lot with people, even if it's just to say hi. And you're right, the intentions behind those connections, when I think about it, it's not really business related or monetary related. I never think about what will this look like as a contract and how much money will that bring me in, which is probably an area I should kind of develop. But I always go in with the intentions of using what I know and what I can do, and to help and support and keep busy. So there's a selfish and a selfless part in everything. It's like just making sure that I'm doing something. I'm growing, even though the world seemed to have stopped. So yeah, signing up to joining Better Up meant that I had to do training for a couple of months. It wasn't a straightforward application. I had to study with them, and they offered a lot of training. Doing the videos for the school, it's not something I had done before. I was just coming up with ideas and just sending it to them, and they were welcomed. And staying in touch with people, with recruiters, with ex-colleagues and friends, and just keep letting them know what I'm still doing. Yeah, I think that's probably the tip. Just if you think of an idea, especially when you go quiet, if a crazy idea comes up, try it.
Yeah.
Try it out.
And I think it's also partly because you love what you do. So it's kind of easier to look for opportunities, or you want to keep learning, you want to keep growing. So you do like naturally step into that. It's not like no one's pushing you. Yeah, I found also, like I've been speaking about this quite recently, it's like that accountability when you work for yourself. It's like you've really got to be accountable to yourself to find opportunities, to push yourself, to create the work. It's not necessarily like, and sometimes that means doing things. I'm the same as you in terms of not focusing on the money at first, focus on the experience, because that's valuable to me in itself. And I do love what I do.
Exactly. I mean, your year is definitely, as you said, you were at the beginning of your sabbatical. You already open your wings, because the big step is to actually decide to take sabbatical, as we both know. So you already spread your wings, but you were just about to fly and travel more. And your year, what were your expectations or visions of the year? Can I ask you to see what yours are, if yours matched in the end as well?
Yeah, so I think there's some part that's been like exactly what I expected, and then another part that's been the complete opposite of what I expected, because I was definitely planning on building my business and doing that remotely. So that was always like working from my laptop in anywhere was always the plan. So that's like COVID, central. That's what everyone's doing. So that didn't change so much, but I did think I was going to be a digital nomad. So I'd mapped out a year of travel. I didn't have it like, I had a rough idea of the places I wanted to go. So I from our trip in Mexico, I'd come home to see my family in South Africa. And then I had a flight booked to Bali, and then I was planning on being in Europe. And there were other, I suppose, the things that haven't happened. I had ideas of courses that I'd like to do, so more like artistic and creative courses that I could.
remember, I think in Greece as well after Bali, and
Exactly,
and obviously Bali was going to open up a lot of cool encounters at that festival that you were going to volunteer at, etc. So yeah, of course that didn't happen, but what did happen?
But then so I was back in South Africa when the borders shut. So I ended up having 3.5 months living at home again. And that's the exact opposite of being like an independent, free digital nomad. Living back at home after 17 years since the last time I lived at home. And I think the most I've spent at home is maybe like 2 weeks since in those 17 years. So that was like a huge adjustment. But then the like unexpected blessing of that was that I didn't appreciate how nice it felt to be in one place. I'd been moving around. I hadn't, so I lived in Durban for 3.5 months. And then when we could travel internally, I moved to Cape Town because I have more of a network of friends here. And it's like slightly closer to a digital nomad life. So this is a really beautiful city to be in. But living in Cape Town is the first time that I like signed a lease in a year. So I hadn't had my own like space in a year. I'd been living out of a bag. I'd been traveling around, and I'd planned to do that for another like 1 to 2 years. So to be grounded, I was like, wow, it actually feels really good to put down roots, to unpack my clothes. I bought like candles and just a few things that made it feel more like a home environment, like nice mugs that I could use, things that make a difference to my life. So that's been like, unexpected, but really good. And I've got to appreciate Cape Town because I studied here, but I haven't lived here really as an adult. And so I didn't know how much there is to do. Like there's a lot of hiking, the beaches are beautiful. And I think after living in London for so long, like I appreciate it so much more now, because like.
And I'm coming to see you. Basically, I'm saying wherever you go, you go do your thing like you did in LA, and I'm like, well, I like what you're doing there, I'm coming. And then off to Cape Town, I like what you're doing there. So I need to be careful where you go next, because that's where basically I'll go next.
Absolutely, I know. And I think it's the same as what you were saying earlier, where you like, when you living what you love, it attracts people to come and want to do the same thing as you, whether that's in your business or your lifestyle, whatever it is. So I feel like an advertisement for Cape Town, like for sure.
Yes. And if you think there was, because we talked about, what did we expect from this year? And actually, I really thought that we were going to talk about, well, we didn't get too attached, so it's not too bad, right? But actually, the way this conversation has gone already is like, well, actually, what's unfolded is equal, if not even better, to what we were expecting. So in a way, we were going to talk about, look, don't get too attached to your vision or to outcomes. Because look, more stuff or different things can still happen in a good way. But is there anything, would you say, that you and I have had hoped for this year that didn't happen? That's what the question just popped up. I was going to ask myself and ask you as well. Like, is there anything though that the 2020 circumstances has really kind of affected in a more negative way that we have to accept?
I think the thing that's coming up for me is just a lot more fear. Like before I was brave, I feel like it was, I don't know where the drive was coming from, but I didn't have any of that attachment that you're talking about. I had a very loose plan. I was open to adapting. I'd be like, cool, if I hear of a good opportunity, I'll go there, I'll do something. Whereas I think there's like, I'm really enjoying being grounded, but I feel like I've lost that bravery. Like I have very little desire to travel or explore. Like I'm just feel a bit more cocooned, and I'm enjoying that. But it's taken away that sense of, and this is what's interesting also when talking about freedom, like there's a freedom that comes from travel, but there's also a freedom that comes from putting roots down, settling in, enjoying your space. And I think that's it's funny that you said that's what you wanted from London this year, because you wanted to create more of that home environment. So what were you thinking when you wanted to create, and you can answer both questions, but
no, thanks for saying that, because the fear of, because I can connect with that a little bit, like it's just a practice, isn't it? It's almost, I've had less practice. I'm a super social person and I love traveling. I don't fear walking into a room of strangers. But you're right, as you talked about, oh, it's created some new fears, or maybe released some fears that you already had. But I now I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm feeling a bit more fearful. And I'm sure I'll get rid of that very quickly when I start traveling, socializing again. But for me, it was my freedom is having choices, right? For me, freedom is knowing I have choices. But then I also know that it doesn't matter. It's not about having limitless choices, but knowing that I have choices. Okay. So the choices were more limited this year, obviously, but actually I still have choices on how I react with that, how I live with my lockdown, what I do with my lockdown. We did some stuff together as well, especially during the first lockdown. What do I create with that extra space, and what do I create with that forced kind of ground, or that forced, even though I wanted it, but it still forced me to be even more stable in London. What can I do with that? So there's a lot of choices still there. There's still somewhat limitless within that, what seems limited by the circumstances. So I still feel free, even though on the surface it looks like I'm less free, because I can't just go and see who I want to see or travel where I want to go. I can't just book a flight for tomorrow or without having to quarantine, etc. But I still got lots of choices within what I can do. So the thing that stopped me doing is I probably would have traveled more, even though I want to be more stable. So I traveled less. However, in a way, it's a blessing, because that's my problem. I feel that my itchy feet for like constantly seeing new places and experiencing new things often stops me from then staying focused with what I really actually wanted. The more important thing, that it was about stabilizing or trying to create something a bit more stable in one place. So in a way, the reduced choices of flying about has helped me stick to my original vision of January, to stay put a little bit longer, although those didn't create the outcomes that I wanted for the business in the way that we talked earlier, but it still opened up new opportunities. So it's very strange, isn't it? Like there is those limits and restrictions, again, actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
And tell me more about what you wanted from the stability. When you were thinking of stability, what was it that you were looking for?
Again, I got into my goals with they're not, there isn't a strict kind of, I don't necessarily know exactly what I want from it, because I'm open to see what it brings. And because I traveled so much, I wanted to see, well, what would happen if I stayed in London again. You know, I've been here 24 plus years, 22 years I've been working in office. So, you know, I traveled a lot, but still with a 9 to 5 kind of lifestyle. So you're still restricted in some ways. And then all of a sudden for 2 years, I'm out in a camper van, I'm out in Asia, solo traveling and doing all sorts of things. So which opened up a lot of opportunities. And I just wanted to be back in London with that new Francesca, and see what could I do with all of this now in my home. And London's my home in a way, you know, my world is my home, but London feels like my home kind of physical home. And so I just wanted to see what would happen if I stayed. What would happen if I could tell a company, oh, I am available for the rest of the year in London, or to a school, could I commit? Because I had been committing half term by half term, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go away. What would it look like if I could commit for a full school year or a full term? So I think that's what I wanted to achieve from that. And also, as I said, it was more personal as well. I wanted to see if being back in my flat and living on my own, even though then I ended up sharing the flats of the lockdown, which was wonderful. Again, another blessing. But then I wanted to live on my own in my flat again, just to see if that was going to create space for a more personal relationship as well. And it has, but not in London.
The irony.
The moment I create space in my life, you know how they say, always create space in your bed for someone to share it with, even though I quite like having the whole bed to myself. So I try to do that, create space in a flat to let people in. And of course, then you meet someone who lives in a different country. Yay!
It's so fascinating, because I think this is also what, like, coming up for me when I hear you speak, it's that those commitments that you can make and the relationships you can build. And that's what I've been feeling like in Cape Town. It's like really highlighted, I have a real desire for community. And I knew that was going to be a struggle when I traveled. But for some reason, there was this other nomadic community that I could tap into. So I was really enjoying that. But I didn't have long enough to know whether there was a depth to it, because I think I was so brief that I was traveling. So I didn't, and a lot of the time I was connecting with old friends. Whereas this is really putting to the test, how deep can you build relationships over a period of time? Well, how long do you need? Because I think even though I've almost been in Cape Town 6 months, which to me feels like so long, you know, because in the grand scheme of things, I mean, even though I was in London 13 years also, so I think that's what I also forget. It was so long. It was like a whole lifetime of living there. And I've been in Cape Town 6 months, and I'm like, hey, where's my community? Where's my deep friendships and connections? But that doesn't happen I don't know how long it takes to happen. I guess this is the experiment also.
Yeah, that's true. So again, you similarly to me, it's just like, well, let's see what happens if I actually stay here. But still with your, and I know you know what you do, we're in touch often. So you still have that nomadic free attitude. You don't have to be, like when I was traveling in a camper van, you know, what I learned, and then I shared with people, it's like, you don't have to be in a camper van moving around to be experiencing similar emotions and adventures. You know, people forget to approach their lives in their hometown or in their new cities in that same way. And I think you do that nomadic that you're just so keen to meet new people and share and co-work and change cafes, but still have a regular cafe you go to, or a new beach, a new route, but still know the bit your preferred kind of beach is still there. You know, it's kind of, you can still do both wherever you are. You don't have, so I think again 2020 may have stopped people from living materially, or you know, have that tangible experience, but we've all experienced adventure this year.
Very true.
Right? Because we've had to get out of our comfort zone, we've had to try new things, people had to redesign their business, connect with clients differently. TV shows recorded like weirdly from people's garages and bedrooms, still making a movie out of it. It's like, what? So gosh, we're very positive about this year, aren't we?
I know. I think maybe you can chat a little bit more about hardships, because I think you're right. Like, I definitely did apply. I knew how to apply making new friends and building community from traveling. I could just bring that into my experience in Cape Town. So that was good. But I think both of us, we're not like probably talking about it as much because we do speak often. It's like there have also been low points. Like before you have that insight, before you realize, oh, I've got like possibility available to me, I have choice, I have freedom. There's definitely been low points for both of us being when we don't feel like that, and we feel more like it just feels hard. I don't know what step to take next. So maybe we can, I don't know, I don't have any like insights or answers right now, but maybe we can just chat about that. So like, is there anything that, I don't know, maybe even lessons from the low points, or you know, anything from that?
We definitely have to talk about that, because of course we've practiced so much about, you know, changing perspective, looking at the bright light, etc., that it doesn't mean that we don't look at the low points, but we're so quick at switching that we forget that they happen, because we don't give them airtime. But let's give them some airtime, because they were needed just as much, and they've happened, and they still do. We're still on lockdown for 2-3 more days, but the lockdown too here in the UK is definitely different from the first one. So we've all evolved from the first one. Low points, I mean, I'm blessed with where I live and my flat and the people I know. However, you know, being in the same home and that kind of, you know, Groundhog Day and getting up and doing the same thing, and not knowing, I didn't know throughout the journey that I was growing. Like you said, you know, oh my God, like looking back, wow. And this is why reflecting, which you always emphasize too, in what you do and your booklets and everything that you share, the resources you share, fantastic for that, because people forget how important it is to reflect. And just now we're reflecting, it's like, please do not throw away 2020. It's been such an amazing year for us. However, this wasn't clear every day. So there were definitely a lot of days where it's like, there you go, what am I doing today? There's days with no clients. Of course, there's not been as booming as perhaps I'd hoped, if it had gone a different way. But then you had to think within the circumstances. It's amazing that you still have regular clients come in. But I think the low points were mostly, I was gonna say they were more personal, but they were definitely also driven by work. You know, there's days perhaps where you don't have a client that day. And that's a perfect day to focus on everything else, that blog you didn't finish, that marketing, that call, reading more, starting something new, or just relax. But your mind takes you to the, like, there you go. It's not going as well as you thought. You need to go back to an office, but now you can't go back to an office because there's no offices to work at, work from. So there were points where it was harder to pick myself up and get clear on what was going on the direction I was taking. But I kept. They wouldn't never last all day. I don't know about you, but there'd be moments, and then I'll be realizing, oh, it's one of those days. So then I need to pick myself up, maybe with like I've learned so many tricks during the first lockdown to actually physically do, you know, the walk, the dance, the writing, the journaling, the calling a friend, and that would normally turn things around for me. I actually don't think I've just made sense. I've just been babbling on.
No, it's perfect sense. I've
just gone round. What about you?
Yeah, so I think that's, you really like highlighted for me the thing of, it was just having way more space in my days than I've had. I don't even know the last, I mean, yeah, it's and so it's the space and then the boredom that comes with it. And it's been ironic for me because I've been like, a big focus for me was not getting my like self-worth from my work and my productivity, because I used to coach teams on how to be highly effective and highly productive, and I wanted to bring more of that, like, what else is there, what is the creative sides of us, being in nature, like what else is there in life besides just work and productivity. But then I had all this space where like I wasn't working that much, even if I could set myself challenges, I could set myself new projects, that I did a lot of that stuff. Even that would not come anywhere close to the amount of work that I used to do. Like it's, you know, and I've created passion projects and side hustles and got involved in different groups, and like I've done a lot, and still I have like stretches of time where I'm just like, what do I do to fill this time and space? So I think that's probably, that's been the hardest thing. I feel like it's probably even just in this last month that stopped making me feel anxious, and I'm just appreciating it. And I'm trying to think what the turning point was. Maybe just becoming aware of it, like that self-reflection and awareness, and just seeing that I don't have to, like, I'm still, by feeling anxious, I'm still attaching some of my identity to work and some of my value. If I'm not being productive, then I'm not of value. And
also I think the meaning of productivity and the meaning of value, because we've been used for decades that productivity means a certain, I don't know for you, but perhaps it could be a number of hours or the number of emails. Oh my God, how many emails do you get a day? Oh, I get 50, I get 200. You know, there's those numbers. That means it's productive because it's linked to normally a company's results, or someone else has set those results. And so you may have done exactly what you needed to do that day, but then you've got another 6 hours. Like you've reached your goal, you feel great, and it's like, oh, but now I feel guilty because we've practiced for so many years that you can't, when you stop, it's just a bit weird. We never had that much time.
Yeah.
And everyone else slowed down. So when you and I were like reaching out to people, can I help you with this? Can I volunteer with that? Can I sign up to be a phone a friend for the elderly, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes people just were not even coming back, or like, we're fine, or just not taking up the offers, because, well, apart from the volunteering, but many other companies slowed down as well, or cut down the numbers, or they didn't need so much support, and therefore everyone slowed down. Like, oh, okay.
It's a total shame. And like most of my career was also working in a massive company that had like, I don't know, between 40 and 70,000 employees. So there was no shortage of things to get involved in and people to connect with. And it was like, I never felt like I could get 100% on top of things, which I actually really enjoyed. Like there was always a new thing and a new challenge. And I liked being that busy. Or at least there was a part of me that really thrived on that. Whereas when you work for yourself, like I'm a solopreneur, there's no teammates to connect with. And there's no other like wider community of people that you can get involved with. So like, you're right, if something else slows down, it's like, well, you don't take priority there because I'm not connected with that work. Like there's not this. So that's been a huge shift for me.
Yeah. But you've been fantastic in dealing with that. Sorry, I just interrupted. But as you were saying that, I was just remembering of all the initiatives that we've done together, but you put out, all the co-working, the sisters co-working, you and the sister on a weekly basis. And we've done anti-racism calls and other calls and interviews that you've created. There's actually a lot that's been created during this time.
So it's probably also, being kind to myself, seeing what there is that's been done. And then the other thing is paying attention to my energy, because I say that I've got a lot of extra space, but sometimes even with that time, I found I haven't had the same kind of energy. And I also question that as like, when I was working in an office, I think there probably was a lot of space where I didn't have energy either, but I could just kind of sit at a desk or be in a meeting where you weren't really expected to like be at your highest peak, engagement. So it might have been easier to fill that space, but not really actually adding much value. Whereas now that I'm at home, when I feel tired, I'm like, oh, I'm going to rest during the day,
yes.
and like getting comfortable with that and not really, I don't know, I felt bad about it at first and I still probably like question it, but learning about my energy cycles and how to be okay with space and time and some boredom. Like boredom's also something to be okay with. We don't have to be like entertained and stimulated every minute.
It's okay. And it makes me question about, all of that human interaction energy that's created when we do work differently. So just being in an office, like you said, there were times where I just want to go to the cubicle in the toilet and just literally nap, like do my 20 seconds kind of power, kind of close your eyes, nap, and then back in the office and keep going. But now when that happens, when you're at home, when you're on lockdown, it's literally, I go to bed.
Right.
I go to bed, my body doesn't, like, literally, I'm just knackered. So how did we do that before? I don't know. I'm just questioning whether there is definitely that magic of that. I don't know, when you work closer with other human beings in a similar environment, do you feed off each other's kind of energy? Because then you might bump into a colleague who's like, oh, we've got a meeting in half an hour, oh, boom, and you just perk up and go, yes, I'll get it ready, and all of a sudden you're alive again. And I think this year that's what I've missed. And I, at least working in cafes or co-working spaces, you get some of that. And I think working from home hasn't really given me that same kind of vibe that I think I've been feeding off over the last 2 decades.
You're so right. I think that's so true, because at first I was like, this is maybe healthier to listen to our own bodies, but I think there's also part of it that's like being the person who has to be the motivator, the inspirational leader, the person doing the tasks, like to wrap that, to be a solopreneur and be doing all those things. You don't have that luxury of having like someone giving you a motivational talk, be like, this is our goal, this is our, or a colleague that you can just be like frustrated with and bounce, those like ideas off.
The manager walking by.
Yeah.
Coffee and have a chat about a TV show or whatever. And I think that used to helped me. And I think that's where I get my energy, you know, when I have my coaching calls, or even just connecting with you and other coaches and friends. You come off a call and you're like, right. Because then you and I have got that habit, that coaching habit, right? At the end of the call, even if it was just a personal catch up, it's like, right, so what are your actions after this? What are you going to go off and do?
Totally. Yeah, you've never stopped being my coach. It's the best.
Annoyingly so.
No, I love it. I love it. It's so great. It works.
Even if your actions like, I'm going to just make myself a cup of tea. Okay, are you committed to do that? How committed are you? 10 out of 10.
Yeah. What's best case scenario? But maybe like let's wrap up with one last question, which is, I think it relates to this, but our own vision of success. So what does success look like for you? And you can make that about your personal life, your business, or holistically. What's success mean for you?
Oh, you know, it's very simple. I thought I was going to struggle with this, but it's just come up and I don't even know why I was thinking it. And I think we touched on that earlier. It's just finding that freedom and space to be you in all areas. Because when you're that free and when you're that confident in what you do or you choose not to do, when you value yourself and you've got a good 10 out of 10 self-worth, you can rarely get touched really and get hurt. You still go down, as we said, there's low moments, but I think success for me is just feeling good about how I show up, that I show up authentically in on everything that I do. So then I know if I've done enough work for today, or if I spoke well with a person, if I in all areas. So it's both personal and business. Just I feel successful if I am being me. And then I know that sometimes I push myself, and then even that may not be authentic because perhaps I'm pushing myself because ego wants me to achieve something differently, or I'm comparing myself to someone else, so it's not authentic. So even there, you know, it's okay to not being your best doesn't mean you also always have to create massive results. It's like being your best in that particular moment and for you, and then just look at, well, why is it okay for me now to go and sit on the sofa for 3 hours, watch TV, which could look like complete failure, right? But actually, if that is a genuine thing that I need, that I allow myself, that I deserve, because I now know how I work. I know I can pick things up at 8 p.m. till 10 and get a blog out in 2 hours. Then that's success for me, because right now I'm just being honest with me, my body, and I'm not even going to think of that blog, because I know that between 8 and anyway, I'm just giving you, my mind's just going off again. But it's, yeah, it was that simple.
It's like the freedom to be you. That's what I heard. Like there's the freedom to be you, your authentic self. And then the other thing I took from that was like that trusting yourself.
Permission to be, yeah.
Yeah, and trusting that you will get things done. Like you believe in yourself. You have your own, I don't know. Does trust resonate with you as something, or something?
You know what? That's it. Because it's all part of that. It's, you know, imagine everything you want from a relationship, and you want, you know, respect, you want the trust, you want someone to make you, to push you, but also someone that gives you moments of calm and affection, and chilling in front of the movie, but also go running and jumping off plane. All of that is the relationship I want with me. So I need to be my best partner, and I think that's success. So it's not finding a best partner, it's just like, yeah, I'm happy with the way I am because I'm showing up as the way I want to be and treating myself in that way. Boom. Because I am learning the tricks. You know, there's sometimes I used to spend days worrying about, why have I not done this yet? And then I just have to be honest. Do I want to do it? No, don't do it. Yes. Okay, do you want to do it now? Not really. I know I can do this in 1 hour, and I'll do it then, last minute or not last minute. But then it's just, you get to know you, and then you just know the way you work best, know what you value, so you don't waste time on things and guilt that you don't need to feel. But also allow yourself to feel low at times and play with that. I don't know. I could go on for hours on this, but the simple answer was, find out who you are, and being authentic is the success.
I love that. And I just want to draw on one more thing, because it's really like been a big thing in my story, because when you're talking about knowing how you feel, knowing what works for you, that sounds like listening to your intuition. And I just wonder if that's like a new thing for you. Do you think you've always listened to your intuition, or has that been part of this experience of becoming a coach?
I've always been quite intuitive. Yeah, that's been a blessing for me, because from a very, very young age, I was always quite playful with spirituality, and making wishes when I saw 22 on my clock from the age of 8 or something. But not because of that, but then there was some sort of belief that there was something else that was guiding me. And whether that was, I thought that was external or internal, I'm not sure right now. I would have to spend another few hours on that. But to keep it short, my intuition's always been quite strong, but whether I listen to it or not, it's definitely, I observe it more now through more quiet moments and more time, more meditation, more journaling. I think I did a post just yesterday or the day before. It's like, chillaxing is probably one of the best way to be productive sometimes, and by going quiet, you can hear your soul speak. So with everything we've just said, and this year quieting down and slowing down, actually it may have been, as it showed for us, quite productive in a way, because it allowed time to tap into that trust and intuition that you just mentioned, listen to you more. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, logically, I shouldn't have left corporate. Logically, I should be like saving money and making the corporate salary or whatever, but it's not about money. But, logically, there's a lot of things I shouldn't have done. But I was braver to listen to my intuition more recently, for sure.
Yeah, and also the whole question that I'm like, I think there's a reason why I like asking this question around definition of success. It's the same question I'd ask, is logic according to who? Like, why is logic based on material value, if that's what you're, like, why is logic this kind of belief in financial security, and it just seems like it all ties back pretty much, the underlying thing is having money. That's what logic seems to be connected with. And then really, like, this is the question of challenging that, is what is all that money for? What is the lifestyle for? And I know there's also the thing that I also have to be conscious of, and I've become way more conscious of it this year, is that is even, sometimes that's a luxurious question to ask, or a privileged question to ask. Like, a lot of the time, baseline, like, you do have to make money. And I know that was when I first immigrated to London, and I was working like 3 different jobs, and they're on a student visa. Like, I had to spend all my time working because I needed to pay my rent,
Absolutely, that's a very good point. It's not just a spiritual development, but there's reality as well to deal with. So it's a privilege for me to be saying, oh, my success is being me. So yeah, you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that as well. It's very important that you feel confident with what you're doing and everything you're trying to do as you, and with integrity. But you also have to bear in mind what's needed to be done, especially if you have people like, I don't have anyone to look after as well. So I have that luxury as well, to say, oh, I can just show up and choose to do this. But it's obviously, everything's driven by choices made and choices you make, but you're right, it's a luxury to answer that question.
But there's a tipping point. Sometimes there's a tipping point, which is like in my case and your case, where you realize I was operating in a way for financial security and stability, and then that didn't stop. Like, there wasn't a switch that flipped over when I was like not needing to be working in that same way. I was still like, my baseline values, which I realized even this year, I just realized my baseline values were financial security, and I was living my life according to, how do I feel financially secure, when I had more choice available to me, and I could, I didn't have to be making decisions for that reason. So I think it's just becoming aware of that. Like, what are the underlying motivations? What are your values? What are your circumstances? And that self-awareness, that all helps you become more authentic and connect with who you are. What's important to you? What lifestyle do you want to live? What choices are you going to make?
It's so important. Even totally fine if your goalpost looks like, you know, $1 billion bank statement. I think that's totally okay to have that kind of title. But if you then know what's behind that, because everyone will see something different from that post. You could all have that, and it could look like a million different. It could manifest in a million different ways. What that means to you, because what will you create with that? What will that make you feel? What will you then do with that, and what will happen? And for some people, they already have everything they need, but maybe that maybe is driven by competition. And for others, like what that means giving more. You know, it's got so many. So again, even judging someone's goal that look financially driven, there should be no judgment there either, because you have no idea what's behind that, the title, the goalpost.
Exactly. So we just focus on our own self-awareness and just like,
yeah,
demonstrate that, be an example. Any final thoughts or things you want to share before we wrap up?
Wow, if anyone got this far from this to listen to us all the way, can you please send me a message? You get a reward. I'll have to come up with something, but if you've listened to us all this far, please connect. Just send me a DM like I listened to you all the way to the end, like, and then we'll chat about some sort of reward for you. So thank you for listening, and thank you for the opportunity. I think we've covered bits and bobs. I just enjoyed talking to you. And you know what I'm taking away overall is real sense of gratitude for this year. Obviously it's not been great in all aspects, but just taking away so much despite everything that's happened. I just feel like 2020 is definitely, I mean, it's a memorable year for more than the obvious, for sure.
Absolutely. And an idea that Francesca and I have is to turn these like lessons that we kind of have spoken about, distill them down and turn them into a blog. So when we do that, I can also put the link, and I'll put the link to your website and your page and Instagram so people can connect with you, of course. And I'll chat to you again soon. But maybe do you want to stay on the call? I'll just stop the recording.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye.